I'm Chloe, 35 female. I live in a quiet suburban neighborhood with my husband, Albert, and our bright, wonderful 7-year-old daughter, Jennifer. For a living, I manage marketing campaigns for a mid-sized tech company, a job that's as demanding as it is rewarding. For years, I believed I had a close, if somewhat complicated, relationship with my older sister, Mabel. But I was about to find out that the foundation of that relationship was built on a series of casual cruelties I had willingly ignored, all leading to a single, explosive confrontation at my daughter's fairytale birthday party. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. For the last 6 years, my sister Mabel had a very specific rule for her children's birthday parties: adults only. It was a strange mandate, especially since her kids, Max and Ava, were toddlers when it began. The first time she announced it, for Max's first birthday, I was confused. "No kids," I had asked over the phone, holding my own 1-year-old Jennifer. "But they're babies." "Oh, you know how it is, Chloe," she'd said with a sigh that sounded like she was carrying the weight of the world. "Luke and I just want a chance to celebrate with our friends without the chaos of a dozen kids running around. It's more of a get-together for the adults. The kids will have their cake, but we want to relax." I didn't understand, but I didn't push. Mabel was my older sister, and she'd always positioned herself as the one who knew best, so I accepted it. Albert and I hired a babysitter for Jennifer and went to the party. When we arrived, the first thing we saw were 3 other toddlers, children of Mabel's closest friends, running wild in the living room, their sticky fingers smearing cake on the furniture. Max himself was toddling around, squealing with delight. My stomach twisted. It wasn't an adults-only party at all. It was just Jennifer isn't invited. When I quietly asked Mabel about the other children, she waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, that's different," she said, not meeting my eye. "Their moms are my support system. We're in the trenches together. You have your marketing career, you wouldn't get it." The implication was clear. I wasn't part of her inner circle of motherhood, so my daughter wasn't welcome. I was hurt, but I let it go. I told myself she was a stressed new mom and didn't mean it maliciously. But the pattern continued. Every year, for both Max's and Ava's birthdays, the invitation would come with the same cheerful yet firm text: "Can't wait to celebrate with you. Just a reminder, it's adults only so we can all relax." And every year, Albert and I would go, leaving Jennifer with a sitter. Each time, we'd see the same group of children, the support system kids tearing through the house, hyped up on sugar while our daughter was at home, missing out. We'd watch them open presents, play games, and blow out candles. We'd smile, give our gifts, and make small talk, all while a knot of resentment tightened in my chest. Albert saw it too. "This isn't right, Chloe," he'd mutter in the car on the way home. "She's deliberately excluding Jennifer." I'd always make excuses for her. "She's overwhelmed. She has 2 kids under 2. Maybe she just can't handle another child there." But deep down, I knew it was personal. Jennifer was a well-behaved, calm child. She wasn't destructive or prone to tantrums. There was no logical reason to single her out. The only reason was Mabel's own insecurity. She had married her husband, Luke, a man with a comfortable but not extravagant income, and had chosen to be a stay-at-home mom. I, on the other hand, had built a successful career, and Albert was a respected software engineer. We weren't ostentatious with our money, but we were comfortable, and I think Mabel resented that. She saw me as the career woman who had it all, and excluding my daughter was a small way to exert power, to create a boundary that put me on the outside. The cruelty of it was subtle but sharp. She'd call me a few days after each party, gushing about how much fun it was. "Oh, Chloe, you should have seen Max's face when he got the new Power Ranger. And Ava was just adorable trying to feed herself cake. It was pure chaos, but the best kind. So glad we kept it small and just for the adults, you know?" She was rubbing it in, framing the exclusion as a favor to me, a way for me to escape the very chaos she was reveling in. I never complained. I never called her out. Part of it was a desire to keep the peace in the family. Our parents had passed away a few years prior, and we were all each other had. I didn't want to create a rift. The other part was a sliver of hope that one day she would grow out of this petty behavior and see how hurtful she was being. I clung to the memory. Why of the sister she used to be, the one who'd shared secrets with me late at night, who'd held my hand at our mother's funeral. But that sister seemed to be fading, replaced by a woman who measured her happiness by how much she could control the people around her. The adults-only rule was her most effective tool. It was a constant reminder of our places in her life. She was the matriarch of her perfect little family, and I was the outsider, the guest who was tolerated but whose child was not welcome. Albert warned me that my silence was enabling her. "She's never going to stop unless you say something," he said one evening after another one of her parties. "You're teaching Jennifer that her feelings don't matter." His words stung because they were true. I was so afraid of confrontation that I was sacrificing my daughter's feelings. But I still couldn't bring myself to do it. I told myself I was taking the high road, but in reality, I was just a coward. And my cowardice was about to lead to the most painful birthday yet. The worst year was Ava's 3rd birthday. By then, Jennifer was 5, and she was acutely aware of what she was missing. She loved her cousins, Max and Ava, and talked about them constantly. She didn't understand why she could never go to their parties. We had tried to explain it in gentle terms. "Auntie Mabel's house is very small, honey," I'd say, a lie that tasted bitter in my mouth. "She just has room for a few friends." Jennifer, with the simple, heartbreaking logic of a child, would ask, "But I'm not her friend. I'm her family. Isn't there room for family?" That year, the party was at a local park. Mabel's excuse for adults only was flimsier than ever. "We're renting a pavilion," her text read, "but it's a public space, and I just can't keep track of a bunch of kids. So, adults only, please, it'll be easier for everyone." Jennifer had been so excited. She had helped me pick out a beautiful unicorn art set for Ava. She wrapped it herself, her little hands struggling with the tape, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Ava will love this, Mommy," she'd said, her eyes shining. "We can play with it together." My heart broke. I didn't have the courage to tell her right then that she wouldn't be going. I waited until the day of the party, a beautiful, sunny Saturday. She came into our room in her favorite yellow dress, her hair neatly brushed. "Is it time to go to Ava's party?" she asked, her voice bubbling with excitement. Albert and I exchanged a pained look. I knelt down to her level, my hands on her small shoulders. "Sweetheart," I began, my voice thick with a guilt that felt like swallowing glass. "Mommy and Daddy have to go to the party, but we're going to drop you off at Grandma's for a little while. You two can bake cookies." Her face fell, the light in her eyes flickered and died. "But, why can't I go? I want to give Ava her present." "I know, baby, but Auntie Mabel's party is just for grown-ups this time." Her lower lip began to tremble. "But it's at the park. Kids are supposed to be at the park." She was right. It made no sense. The lie was so thin, so transparent, that even a 5-year-old could see through it. She started to cry, not loud, angry sobs, but quiet, hiccuping tears of pure disappointment. It was the sound of a child learning for the first time that the world and the people in it could be unfairly cruel. We had to go. We had already RSVP'd, and not showing up would cause a different kind of family drama. The entire drive to the park was filled with a tense, miserable silence, broken only by Jennifer's soft sniffles from the back seat. We had decided to drop the gift off quickly and then leave, unable to stomach the idea of celebrating while our daughter was so miserable. When we pulled up to the park, the scene was exactly as we had feared. The pavilion was festooned with pink and purple balloons. About a dozen kids, none of whom were related to us, were chasing each other across the grass, their shrieks of laughter echoing in the warm air. Max and Ava were in the center of it all, their faces smeared with chocolate frosting. Mabel, holding a glass of wine, was laughing with a group of other moms. It was a children's party. A loud, chaotic, joyful children's party that our daughter was explicitly forbidden from attending. Jennifer saw it all from the car window. Her sniffling stopped, replaced by a sharp intake of breath. She pressed her face against the glass, her eyes wide with a dawning, painful understanding. "Mommy," she whispered, her voice barely audible. There are other kids here. I couldn't speak. A wave of hot, furious shame washed over me. I looked at Albert, whose face was a mask of cold anger. He just shook his head, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. This was the moment I had been dreading. The moment the lie was laid bare and my daughter saw the truth. Her aunt didn't want her here. We got out of the car, leaving Jennifer inside with the doors locked and the engine running. We walked over to Mabel, the wrapped unicorn art set feeling like a 10-pound weight in my hands. "Chloe, Albert, you made it," Mabel chirped, giving me a one-armed hug. "We can't stay," Albert said, his voice clipped and tight. "We just wanted to drop this off for Ava." "Oh, nonsense," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "Stay for a drink, the kids are having a blast." My self-control, worn thin by years of biting my tongue, finally snapped. The kids? I thought this was an adults-only party, Mabel. She had the grace to look momentarily flustered. "Well, you know, it's just my mommy group. It's different." "Different how?" I pressed, my voice low and shaking with a rage I hadn't realized I was capable of. "How is it different?" "Because my daughter is sitting in the car right now, crying her eyes out, watching a party she was told she couldn't come to." "Explain to me how that's different." The other moms fell silent, their eyes darting between us. Mabel's cheerful facade crumbled, replaced by a defensive scowl. "Don't make a scene, Chloe, you're overreacting. It's just a kid's party." "Exactly," I shot back. "It's a kid's party, and my kid, your niece, was deliberately excluded. For the 5th year in a row. Why? What has Jennifer ever done to you?" "This isn't the time or place," she hissed, grabbing my arm. I pulled away. "No, it's the perfect time and place. I'm done. I'm done making excuses for you. I'm done letting you hurt my daughter." I placed the gift on the picnic table, turned my back on her stunned face, and walked back to the car with Albert. As we drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror. Jennifer was still staring out the back window, her face streaked with tears, watching the party disappear from view. That was the moment something inside me hardened. The hope I'd held onto for so long, the hope that my sister would change, finally died. And in its place, something new began to grow. It wasn't a plan for revenge, not yet. It was just a quiet, cold resolve. I would never again allow my sister to make my child feel worthless. Never again. The drive home from the park was the quietest, most agonizing drive of my life. Jennifer had stopped crying. She just sat strapped in her car seat, staring blankly out the window, a silent statue of disillusionment. That silence was so much worse than her tears. It was the sound of her retreating into herself, of a little bit of her childhood innocence being chipped away by a casual act of cruelty she couldn't comprehend. When we got home, she walked straight to her room and closed the door. Albert and I stood in the hallway, listening to the suffocating silence. "I am so sorry, Chloe," Albert said, wrapping his arms around me. "I should have put my foot down years ago. I should have refused to go." "No," I said, leaning my head against his chest. "This is on me. I'm the one who kept making excuses. I'm the one who kept telling myself it was better to keep the peace. What a fool I've been. The peace was a lie, and my daughter paid the price for it." That evening, the text messages started. First from Mabel. "I can't believe you caused a scene like that in front of my friends. You embarrassed me and ruined Ava's party. You're so selfish." I stared at the message, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. I was selfish. Not my sister, who had systematically excluded her niece from every family celebration for half a decade. Me. Then came a message from her husband, Luke. "Mabel is really upset. You know how stressed she gets. You should have just talked to her privately." I didn't bother to respond to either of them. What was there to say? They lived in a reality I no longer recognized, a world where their comfort was paramount and the feelings of a small child were an inconvenience. The final message was the one that solidified my resolve. It was from one of the mommy group friends, a woman named Sarah whom I barely knew. "Hey Chloe," Mabel told me what happened. "I'm really sorry. For what it's worth, I never understood the adults-only thing. My kids love Jennifer. I hope you guys can work it out." It was a small gesture of kindness, but it was the crack in the facade I needed. Mabel hadn't just lied to me, she had been curating a specific narrative for her friends, too. I wondered what that narrative was. Did she tell them I was a snob? That I didn't want my daughter playing with their children? The thought made my blood run cold. A few days later, still raw from the incident, I ran into another mom from Mabel's circle, Jessica, at the grocery store. We exchanged awkward pleasantries, and then she hesitated, looking uncomfortable. "Listen," she said, lowering her voice. "I hope I'm not overstepping, but I heard about the party. I just wanted to say, Mabel told us you preferred not to bring Jennifer to chaotic kid events. She said you were very career-focused and didn't like the mess. And noise, so she made it adults only, as a favor to you." I froze in the middle of the cereal aisle, my hand hovering over a box of Cheerios. The sheer, calculated audacity of the lie took my breath away. It was genius in its cruelty. She hadn't just excluded my daughter, she had twisted the narrative to make me the villain. She had painted me as a cold, career-obsessed mother who looked down on her stay-at-home mom friends and their boisterous children. She had used my silence, my desperate attempts to keep the peace, as proof of her story. I had never complained, so it must be true. She said, "What?" I finally managed to say, my voice a strangled whisper. Jessica nodded, her expression full of pity. "Yeah, she said you appreciated having a break from mom duty. We all thought it was a little strange, but Mabel can be very convincing. After you left the park, she told everyone you had a meltdown because the stress of your job was getting to you." The grocery store seemed to tilt on its axis. Every polite smile, every stilted conversation I'd had with these women over the years was now cast in a new, horrifying light. They hadn't seen me as a fellow mother, they'd seen me as the person Mabel had told them I was. The puzzle pieces clicked into place. The reason she was so adamant about the rule, the reason she bragged about the chaos afterward, it was all part of the performance. She wasn't just excluding Jennifer. She was methodically isolating me, cementing her own position as the queen bee of her social circle by painting me as the aloof outsider who thought she was too good for them. I thanked Jessica, my mind reeling, and abandoned my shopping cart. I drove home in a daze, the conversation playing over and over in my head. The betrayal was deeper than I could have ever imagined. It wasn't just about a birthday party. It was about a systematic campaign of lies designed to assassinate my character within her social sphere. My desire to avoid confrontation had given her the perfect weapon to use against me. She had twisted my passivity into snobbery, my pain into selfishness. That night, I told Albert everything. He listened silently, his expression growing darker with every word. When I was done, he stood up and began pacing the living room. "That's it," he said, his voice dangerously calm. "We're done, Chloe, completely done. We are not seeing them. We are not talking to them. They do not exist." "But Jennifer loves her cousins," I said weakly, the old habit of peacemaking dying hard. "And her aunt is using them as a weapon to hurt you and our daughter," he countered, stopping in front of me. "What do you think is going to happen when the kids are older? When Jennifer can understand the lies Mabel is telling? This isn't just petty jealousy anymore. This is malicious. We have to protect our daughter from that, and we have to protect you." He was right. This wasn't something we could fix with a heart-to-heart conversation. The rot was too deep. My sister had been actively working against me for years, poisoning my reputation with the very people she claimed were her support system. She had built her social standing on a foundation of lies about me. I thought about Jennifer, sleeping peacefully in her room, and a wave of protective fury washed over me. I had allowed this to go on for too long. I had prioritized a hollow, imaginary family peace over my own child's well-being. That ended now. We weren't just going to cut them off. That felt too passive. It would allow Mabel to spin another story, to paint us as the ones who had abandoned the family. No, I was going to do something else. I wasn't going to sink to her level. I wasn't going to lie or manipulate. I was going to do something much more powerful. I was going to show everyone the truth, and I knew just how to do it. The weeks following the disastrous park party were quiet. I didn't return Mabel's increasingly frantic calls and texts. Albert and I presented a united front of absolute silence. It was difficult at first. The habit of family obligation is a hard one to break. But every time my resolve wavered, I pictured Jennifer's face in the car window, and the silence became easy. It became a shield. During this time, Jennifer's 7th birthday was approaching. For years, we had kept her parties small and simple, a few close friends, a cake at home. Part of me, I realized with a fresh pang of guilt, had been deliberately downplaying her celebrations to avoid making Mabel feel bad or creating any sort of competition. I was so accustomed to managing my sister's insecurities that I had muted my own daughter's joy. Not this year. This year would be different. "Albert," I said one evening as we were cleaning up after dinner, "I want to throw Jennifer the party she deserves, the party she's always dreamed of." He smiled, a real, warm smile for the first time in weeks. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking big," I said, a spark of excitement igniting within me. "I'm thinking the ultimate princess party." Jennifer was obsessed with princesses, not just the classic ones, but all of them. She loved their bravery, their kindness, and of course, their beautiful dresses. A princess party was her ultimate fantasy. "Let's do it," Albert said without hesitation. "Let's go all out, whatever you want. Our little girl deserves the world." And so, Operation Royal Proclamation, as Albert jokingly called it, began. For the next month, I channeled all my energy, all my hurt and anger, into planning the most magical, unforgettable party imaginable. My skills as a marketing manager, usually reserved for tech product launches, were now fully deployed for a 7-year-old's birthday. First, the venue. Our backyard was nice, but it wasn't a castle. I did some research and found a local historical estate that rented out its gardens for events. It was an extravagant choice, but it was perfect. It had stone archways, a sprawling lawn, and a beautiful rose garden that looked like it was pulled straight from a fairy tale. I booked it for a Sunday afternoon. Next, the invitations. I designed them myself, elegant scrolls tied with a gold ribbon printed on pearlescent cardstock. They were addressed to princess guests' name and requested their presence at the royal ball in honor of Princess Jennifer's 7th birthday. I didn't just invite the kids from Jennifer's class. I also got the contact information for every single mother in Mabel's support system, including Sarah, who had tipped me off, and Jessica from the grocery store. I made sure to send an invitation for their children. Each invitation explicitly stated that parents were welcome and encouraged to stay and enjoy the festivities. There would be no ambiguity, no adults-only nonsense. Then came the details, the little touches that would transform a party into an experience. I hired a party planning company that specialized in character events. We would have actors dressed as Cinderella and Belle, who would not just pose for pictures but would lead the children in games, story time, and a royal etiquette lesson. I rented a small, elegant white bounce house, which the company called a wedding bounce castle, and decorated it with floral garlands. We booked a caterer to provide delicate tea sandwiches, fruit wands, and a dessert table that would rival a royal banquet, complete with a magnificent 3-tiered princess castle cake. Albert was in charge of activities. He designed a royal quest for the kids, with clues hidden around the garden, leading to a treasure chest filled with princess-themed party favors, tiaras, wands, and personalized jewelry boxes for every child. He even rented a small pony, decorated with ribbons, to give unicorn rides around the lawn. Every decision was made with one goal in mind: to create a day of pure, unadulterated joy for our daughter. But a secondary, unspoken goal hummed beneath the surface. This party was also a statement. It was a carefully crafted event designed to dismantle the false narrative my sister had spent years building. I wasn't the cold, aloof career woman who disliked children's parties. I was a mother who would move heaven and earth to make her child happy. And I was going to prove it, not with words, but with an experience so overwhelmingly magical that it would be impossible to deny. I felt a twinge of guilt about the cost, but it was fleeting. We were fortunate to be able to afford it, and frankly, I considered it an investment in my daughter's happiness and a final, decisive end to years of emotional turmoil. We were spending money not just on a party, but on drawing a line in the sand. As the day approached, the RSVPs poured in. Every single child I had invited was coming. The mothers from Mabel's group all confirmed, their messages full of excitement. "Mila is counting down the days," one wrote. "This sounds absolutely incredible," wrote another. There was no mention of Mabel, no awkward questions. It was as if they were all waiting for an opportunity to connect with me outside of her carefully controlled orbit. The day before the party, as Albert and I were loading decorations into the car, my phone buzzed. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Hi Chloe, this is Sarah from Mabel's group. I just wanted to give you a heads up. Mabel knows about the party. She is not happy, like really not happy. Just thought you should know." I showed the text to Albert. He read it and nodded grimly. "We knew this was coming. Are you ready?" I took a deep breath, looking at the mountain of pink and gold decorations. I thought of Jennifer, who was currently in her room, laying out her custom-made princess dress for the 4th time that day, her face a perfect picture of pure anticipation. "Yes," I said, a sense of calm washing over me. "I'm ready. Let her be unhappy. Her unhappiness is no longer my problem to manage." The day of the party was perfect. The sun was shining, the sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves in the gardens of the estate. When we arrived, the event planners were already transforming the space. A grand, balloon-arched entrance welcomed our guests. The tables were draped in pink linens with gold runners, each place setting marked with a personalized scroll. Cinderella and Belle were rehearsing their story time near the rose garden, their beautiful gowns shimmering in the sunlight. It was everything I had envisioned and more. Jennifer arrived like a true princess. She wore a stunning, floor-length gown the color of a summer sky, her hair swept up in an elegant bun with a sparkling tiara nestled in it. When she saw the gardens, the castle bounce house, and the pony with ribbons in its mane, her jaw dropped. Her eyes, wide with wonder, were the only reward I needed. "Mommy," she breathed, clutching my hand, "is this all for me?" "All for you, my sweet girl," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "You deserve to feel like a princess today and every day." The guests began to arrive, and the party sprang to life. The children, all dressed in their finest prince and princess attire, were ecstatic. They ran straight for the bounce house, their laughter filling the air. The parents, including all the mothers from Mabel's group, looked just as impressed. They mingled on the patio, sipping champagne and raspberry cocktails, their conversation buzzing with admiration. "Chloe, this is absolutely breathtaking," Jessica, the mom from the grocery store, said to me, her eyes sweeping over the scene. "You have to tell me who you used for the planning. I've never seen anything like it." "I did most of it myself," I replied with a smile. "I guess my project management skills come in handy outside the office." She laughed. "I'll say, Mabel always told us you weren't into this kind of thing. I'm so glad she was wrong." It was a small comment, but it felt like a monumental victory. The truth was unfolding, not through angry accusations or defensive explanations, but through action. I spent the next hour watching my daughter. She was radiant. She held court with Cinderella, bravely patted the pony's nose, and led her friends on the royal quest Albert had designed. She wasn't just happy, she was confident, celebrated, and surrounded by friends. This was the childhood I wanted for her. One where she was the main character in her own story, not an unwelcome guest in someone else's. The highlight of the party was the cake ceremony. The magnificent castle cake was brought out, and everyone gathered around. Jennifer stood before it, her face glowing in the light of the 7 candles. As everyone began to sing "Happy Birthday," I scanned the crowd of smiling faces. I saw her teachers, her friends from ballet class, and the group of women who had, for years, only known me through my sister's distorted lens. Today, they were seeing the real me, the mother who had poured her heart into creating this perfect day for her child. Just as the song finished and Jennifer took a deep breath to blow out her candles, I saw it. A flash of movement at the edge of the Gardens near the entrance. My heart lurched. It was Mabel. She wasn't alone. She was holding the hands of her two children, Max and Ava, who were both dressed in their everyday play clothes, looking bewildered and out of place. And they were sobbing. Loud, heart-wrenching sobs that cut through the joyful atmosphere. A hush fell over the party. Everyone turned to look. Mabel stood there, a thunderous expression on her face, positioning her crying children like two small, tear-stained props in her personal drama. She had timed her entrance for maximum impact, right at the climax of the celebration. The mothers from her friend group exchanged uneasy glances. Jessica caught my eye and gave me a look that was a mixture of apology and warning. My first instinct was the old one, panic. A desperate urge to smooth things over, to manage the situation, to placate her. But then I looked at Jennifer. Her smile had vanished. Her perfect moment was being stolen, hijacked by her aunt's manufactured crisis. And my panic was instantly replaced by a wave of ice-cold calm. Albert appeared at my side, his hand resting protectively on my back. "I'll handle this," he murmured. "No," I said, my voice steady. "I will." I had spent years avoiding this confrontation. I had swallowed my hurt, ignored the insults, and allowed her to walk all over me and my family, all in the name of peace. But she had brought the war to my doorstep, to my daughter's sanctuary. There was nowhere left to retreat. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and started walking toward my sister. The party, and the past 6 years, had all been leading to this single moment. As I walked across the lawn toward Mabel, the silence was deafening. The only sounds were the hiccuping sobs of her children and the gentle rustle of the wind. Every eye was on us. I could feel the weight of their collective gaze, a mixture of curiosity, pity, and morbid fascination. Mabel's expression was a mask of self-righteous fury. She stood her ground, one hand on each of her children's shoulders, as if presenting them as evidence of some great injustice. Max and Ava looked miserable. Their faces were red and puffy, streaked with tears and dirt. They were clearly overwhelmed and confused, pawns in a game they didn't understand. My heart ached for them, but my sympathy was overshadowed by the cold anger I felt toward their mother for using them this way. "Mabel," I said when I reached her. My voice was quiet, even, and devoid of the emotion that was churning inside me. "What are you doing here?" "What am I doing here?" she scoffed, her voice loud enough for everyone on the patio to hear. "I'm here because my children are heartbroken. They've been crying for an hour, asking why they weren't invited to their cousin's party. How could you do this, Chloe? How could you be so cruel as to deliberately exclude them?" The hypocrisy was so staggering it was almost comical. She was accusing me of the very thing she had done to my daughter with chilling precision for 6 years. But she wasn't just accusing me, she was performing. This was a show for her friends, a last-ditch effort to reclaim the narrative and paint me as the villain. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't get defensive. I just looked at her, holding her gaze, and let her words hang in the air. "You want to know why they weren't invited?" I asked, my voice still calm. "Let's talk about it. For Max's 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th birthdays, and for Ava's 1st, 2nd, and 3rd birthdays, what was the rule?" She faltered, her self-righteous anger flickering for a second. "That was different." "Was it?" I pressed on, taking a small step closer. "Was it different when Jennifer, at 5 years old, sat in our car and cried while she watched all of your friends' children celebrating at a park party you told us was adults only? A party you specifically told her she could not attend?" A murmur went through the crowd of parents on the patio. A few of the mothers from her group shifted uncomfortably, refusing to meet Mabel's panicked gaze. "That's not what happened," she stammered, her voice losing its conviction. You always said you didn't like big, chaotic parties. I was doing you a favor." This was the moment to dismantle the lie once and for all. "A favor?" I asked, and this time I allowed a note of incredulous disbelief to enter my voice. I turned my head slightly, just enough to acknowledge the audience she had so foolishly provided. "Did it feel like a favor when you told your friends that I was a snob who looked down on them? That I was a cold career woman who didn't want her daughter playing with your children? Was that the favor you were doing me, Mabel? Or was it just a convenient lie to make yourself feel more important? Jessica and Sarah were staring at her now, their expressions hardening from discomfort into dawning comprehension. The lie, spoken aloud in the clear light of day, sounded as pathetic and ugly as it truly was. Mabel's face went white, then blotchy red. She was cornered. Her audience was turning on her. "You have no idea what it's like," she spat, her voice dropping to a venomous hiss. "To be home with kids all day, with no help. You just swan in from your important job, throwing money around to make everyone else feel bad." There it was, the truth, finally. The raw, pathetic jealousy that had been festering for years, the root of all her cruelty. It had never been about Jennifer. It had been about me. I looked from her contorted face to her crying children, then back to my own daughter, who was watching us with wide, worried eyes from across the lawn. My anger evaporated, replaced by a profound and weary sadness. This wasn't a victory. It was just a tragedy. "I see," I said softly. "So, to make yourself feel better, you decided to make a little girl feel worthless. Year after year. You let my daughter watch from the outside, and you taught your own children that it was okay to exclude family. All because you were insecure." I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. "This party," I said, gesturing to the beautiful scene behind me, "is not about you. It's not an attack. It's the celebration my daughter has always deserved and never got because I was too busy trying to manage your feelings. That stops today. You are not welcome here, Mabel. Your behavior has consequences, and this is one of them." She stared at me, speechless. Her script had run out. There was no witty comeback, no way to twist this back in her favor. She had been exposed, in front of everyone, as the petty, manipulative person she truly was. I then knelt down to speak to Max and Ava. "I am so sorry that your mommy put you in this situation," I said gently. "It was not fair to you, but this is a private party, and you can't stay." I stood up and looked my sister in the eye one last time. "You should go." Without another word, Mabel grabbed her children's hands and practically dragged them away. She didn't look back. As she disappeared through the archway, a smattering of applause broke out from the patio. I turned and saw several of the moms, including Jessica and Sarah, clapping softly, their faces filled with relief and support. I walked back to my daughter, my legs feeling a little shaky. The fairytale magic of the day had been momentarily broken, but now a different kind of magic was settling in its place. The magic of truth, of standing up for oneself, of peace finally won. Jennifer ran to me and wrapped her arms around my legs. "Is Auntie Mabel mad, Mommy?" she asked in a small voice. "Yes, honey, I think she is," I said, stroking her hair. "But that is not your problem to worry about. Now, did you make a wish when you blew out your candles?" Her face lit up again, the shadow of the confrontation already fading. "Yes, I wished for a pony." I laughed, scooping her up in my hug. "Well, we have one for another hour, so you better make the most of it." The party wasn't ruined. In a strange way, it was now complete. The monster had been faced, the curse had been broken, and the princess was finally free to enjoy her castle. After Mabel's dramatic exit, a strange thing happened. The tension that had momentarily gripped the party didn't linger. Instead, it felt as if a storm cloud had finally passed, leaving behind cleaner air and brighter sunshine. The other parents, especially the women from Mabel's circle, went out of their way to be warm and engaging. It was like they had been released from an unspoken obligation to keep me at a distance. Sarah came over to me while I was watching Jennifer take her 5th unicorn ride. "I am so sorry, Chloe," she said, her expression full of genuine remorse. "We should have known. We should have questioned what she was telling us. For years, she's been playing these little games, painting people in a certain light. I think we were all a little afraid of getting on her bad side." "You don't have to apologize," I told her, and I meant it. "She's very good at what she does." "Well, not anymore," Jessica added, joining us with 2 fresh glasses of the raspberry cocktail. "I think you just ended her reign of terror." We all laughed, and it felt good. It felt like connection, real and unforced. For the rest of the afternoon, I found myself in easy conversation with these women I had known for years but had never really known at all. We talked about our kids, our jobs, our frustrations, the normal, everyday things that build friendships. I realized how much of my energy had been consumed by navigating Mabel's moods and manipulations. Without her toxic presence, I was free to simply be myself. When the party was over and the last guest had departed, Albert, Jennifer, and I stood together in the quiet garden. The sun was beginning to set, casting a golden glow over the leftover decorations. Jennifer, exhausted but incandescently happy, was clutching the little jewelry box from the treasure hunt. "Mommy," she said, her voice sleepy, "this was the best day of my entire life." I knelt down and hugged her tightly, fighting back tears. "I'm so glad, my love." That night, after Jennifer was tucked into bed, dreaming of castles and unicorns, Albert and I sat on the couch, surrounded by a mountain of presents. My phone had been buzzing intermittently. A flood of texts from the other moms, thanking us for the wonderful party and suggesting playdates. And then, there was one from a number I knew all too well. My sister. "I can't believe you would humiliate me in front of my friends," the message read. "You've turned them all against me. You've ruined everything. I hope you're happy." I read it out loud to Albert. The old Chloe would have felt a pang of guilt. The old Chloe would have wondered if she had gone too far. But the woman sitting on the couch that night just felt a profound sense of peace. "Should I respond?" I asked. Albert took the phone from my hand, typed for a moment, and showed me the screen. His reply was simple, direct, and perfect. "Happy is a strong word, Mabel. For the first time in a long time, we're at peace. Your feelings are no longer our responsibility. Please don't contact us again." He hit send and then blocked her number. He did the same for Luke. "Is that it?" I asked, a little stunned by the finality of it. "That's it," he said, pulling me into a hug. "We're done, we're free." In the months that followed, our lives became noticeably lighter. The holidays were quieter but infinitely more joyful. We started new traditions, just our little family of 3. We formed real friendships with the families from the party. Jennifer had regular playdates with kids she'd previously only seen at her cousins' exclusionary events. She was thriving, and so was I. I learned that Mabel's social circle had, in fact, imploded. After the party, several of the other women had confronted her about the lies she had told. Stripped of her ability to control the narrative, her friendships, which had been built on such a flimsy foundation, crumbled. The support system she had lorded over me was gone. I felt a brief, fleeting moment of pity for her, but it passed. She had built her own prison of insecurity and lies. It wasn't my job to break her out of it. The silence from her side of the family was absolute. We received no birthday cards, no holiday greetings. It was as if an entire branch of our family tree had been neatly pruned away. And while it was sad, it was also a relief. It was the end of a long, draining chapter. One afternoon, about a year later, Jennifer and I were in the backyard, planting flowers. She was chattering away about school and her friends when she suddenly grew quiet. "Mommy," she said, looking up at me with her serious 7-year-old eyes, "do you think we'll ever see Auntie Mabel again?" I paused, trowel in hand. I had wondered when this question would come. I chose my words carefully. "I'm not sure, honey. Sometimes people need to stay apart for a while. Sometimes that's what's healthiest for everyone." She seemed to consider this for a moment. "Okay, S." He said, seemingly satisfied, "because the party last year was way more fun." I smiled and went back to digging in the dirt. She was right. The peace we had now was more valuable than any forced family gathering. I had learned a hard lesson, that keeping the peace at the expense of your own well-being and your child's is not peace at all. It's surrender. And by finally standing up, by throwing a party, by speaking the truth, I hadn't started a war. I had finally ended one.